All right, and we are going for Drugs, God, and Music, episode 5, and this one is the theme. Presumably, we never really know what we're going to talk about, but the presumably the theme is Bicycle Day because that is later this week.
Yeah. You want to tell us what Bicycle Day is?
Oh, am I supposed to do that?
Was invented?
Yes, that was the day the bicycle was invented. It was the so what was 71 years ago. Albert Hoffman invented. He was a chemist in Belgium. I forget. I haven't. I've read the story many times, including his entire book, but I'm not lately. I'm not
Yeah.
exactly great with
Oh, I thought it was
details.
Austria.
Maybe it was Austria. I mean, it literally is like someplace that's not the United States or Africa. I don't know. It was like in one of those European countries that like supposedly exists, but doesn't really. One of those places.
If you haven't been there, you can see it.
Yeah, yeah. I always think it's funny you hear about something happening in a state and you're like, is like Ohio. Is Ohio real? I've never been there, and I don't even hear about it every day. It's supposedly a real place in the country where I live, but I am a little bit skeptical about that.
Yeah, my daughter's like that. She's like, nobody lives in Erie. We're like, oh,
Erie, in the
what?
same state. Yeah, and Erie is what, like 20 miles from where she lives.
We do live there.
Hey, this is a good question, actually. Our very first person to join our theme. Oh, anyway, yeah. So we are. I guess it's in our title is that it's about Bicycle Day. So, what have you gotten out of your experiences with LSD? You know, what's funny is that we always talk about this detailed stuff, and then we get questions that are sort of like these broad to me, like a broad question, like "What's your favorite psychedelic?" or "What do you like about the world?"
I'm helping somebody push a car.
You're helping somebody push a car.
Yeah.
Hmm. I see. Well, you're a saint, I guess.
I'll be ready.
It's hard for me to say exactly what I've gotten out of LSD because it's so much, and it's a big part of my like identity. Let me think about that. Oh, okay. The most important LSD trip I ever had was when I was, let's see, 21, I think, and it was my second trip, I think, and it was with my wife, and it's just hard to describe. We were so close. A lot of it was interpersonal. And it is the day we got engaged, and the day she got arrested, and the day I ended up in the hospital. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and we had all these like psychic connections, and it was probably that day we decided. Well, we didn't decide to move to Colorado, but we certainly never would have moved to Colorado if it wasn't for that day. We called it the Magic Day for a long time. It was like a basic foundation, just the bonding that day was a basic foundation of our relationship.
Yeah, I didn't know that Aaron ever got arrested.
Well, it was my fault. I don't know if I want to go into the details. But yeah, it involved. I mean, we weren't even high at that point. Actually, we were coming down. But anyway, it involved LSD, definitely.
All right. Well, sounds promising.
Trying to think of other
LSD use.
the most important trips I've ever had. The trip that you and I had in Steamboat Springs was a pretty big one for me. Again, that was pretty interpersonal. It was important for our relationship, but I don't remember what else what else I was dealing with. I'm trying to think about like spiritual stuff that's happened on LSD. But now that I think about it, spiritual stuff has tended to happen more on mushrooms for me, I think. More cognitive? Yeah, I know mushrooms aren't actually very cognitive for you. You often talk about that you're not thinking and you don't have lots of creative thoughts. Oh yeah, I can tell you the story of that if you want. Or you read the book, right? So he had invented it what like 5 years prior. So like 75 years ago. And he was working with how do you say it? Ergot? Is that how you say it? Which is like this mold on like wheat or something. And it had been traditionally used for various medicines and had a lot of history behind it. And so his employer, Santos, a drug company, was hiring him because he was a chemist to experiment with it and see if they could get anything out of it. So he was synthesizing like dozens, if not hundreds, of chemicals from ergot, and some of them went and looking for products basically. And he ran into LSD. What is it? 25. He ran into LSD 25 and was just kind of curious about it. He didn't have any application that he ran into it, and that's why he didn't follow up at first. But all he said was he was intuitively curious about it. And then, so he made another batch 4 years later. I think it was 4 years, or maybe it was a couple of years. I don't remember, but it was at least a couple of years. Made another batch and got a little on his hand. But literally, he was a good scientist, and it should not have been very much that was on him, right? So, and he knew that. So, and he felt just a little bit weird, right? And so he knew it must be powerful stuff because he had gloves on and stuff, and he shouldn't have had touched it at all. So then on April 19th, he did a controlled experiment where he ate some, and what we now think was probably about like 1,000 micrograms, which is a big dose. That's like, oh, okay, maybe I've got it wrong. I haven't read the question, the story in a long time. I just remember like his dose was pretty big. And then we call it the bicycle day because, well, he started tripping and kind of freaking out. And like a lot of people have on their first trip, like it's kind of good, bad, shocking. I mean, well, he didn't have exactly a bad trip, but it wasn't exactly a good trip either because he was shocked, but also in awe of what he had ran into. And then they call it the bicycle day because he and his lab assistant bicycled home. And I guess his lab assistant said that he actually was biking really fast, which is kind of scary, but that's what they did. Yeah, they biked home, and so that is the bicycle day, and it's An important day, you can say it's the invention of LSD, obviously, but to me, I think it's a bigger thing. You know, Hoffman went on to be involved in the early days of psilocybin and a little bit with Salvia divinorum. And that was obviously that wasn't the first psychedelic trip anybody had ever had. By any means. People have been tripping for thousands of years. But I think we could probably say the Bicycle Day, or at least when we celebrate the Bicycle Day, to me, what we're celebrating isn't just LSD, it's the beginning of the modern psychedelic age. And I mean, it went to Europe quick too. Well, I mean, he was European, in fact, which we just talked about. Well, it started out with scientists because psychologists it figured out right away, including Hoffman, that it had potential for psychological therapy, this psychological application. And so it started going, and it was legal. Like you, and it was only being made one place. It was Sandoz, I'm calling it. Even I know I'm close. And so everybody was buying their stuff. And at first, it wasn't controlled or anything. And it didn't even occur to them at first that it would become popular recreationally. I say recreationally a little bit iffy because I feel like that word gets abused, but they didn't think it would have applications or that it would get popular like on the street, basically. But it did, and then it was a lot of the giants of the psychedelic age, like the guys at Harvard, were what the early '60s is when Timothy Leary and the other people at Harvard and people and in California started experimenting with it. And these guys were also scientists, but they were working with undergrads and they were beatniks. And it was in this scene that the beatnik 50s beatnik scene became the 60s hippie scene.
I think it also served to link America to Eastern consciousness because I mean it was already linked to some degree, but after LSD or during LSD, there's some like really key players that went over to India primarily and find gurus and bring back teachings, yeah, bring it into the scene.
Well, that's an interesting question. Oh, by the way, somebody wanted to ask. It was the same person, Robert, who asked us our first question. Had a follow up question. Um, I'll just read it as a follow up question. How do you deal with fear/anxiety when in a different headspace where it's easy for thoughts to spiral? So essentially, how do you deal with thought circles, and I assume in different headspace essentially means when tripping, but I suppose you could have that happen in other, well, yeah, I certainly have it happen in other, like in insomnia, you're half asleep and then you're just like fucking thinking. And that, I think, at least for me, like bad trips don't happen a whole lot anymore, or maybe I just don't mind them. I don't know how to put it, but in any case, the spiraling thoughts is a common pattern that people struggle with when they're tripping. That's all I'm saying.
Another way to phrase the question is how do you deal with spinning thoughts in general? On psychedelics, they're more amplified, but you're just running into what you always are running into and may be able to ignore them easier or cope. But you but you haven't attained real discipline or mastery over your own mind. And then when you're on drugs, it magnifies. So that, I mean, I was suggesting that to be a perspective to kind of talk about it. We could talk about whatever, but yeah, I do think that that's the basic question of mindfulness and meditation, and really kind of what I was saying, that I think after people started realizing that consciousness was the seat. I mean, maybe
Jeremy.
working with it in a different
Jeremy.
way.
I'm gonna go take a call.
itself.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
Jeremy. I'm gonna take a call.
What? Let's see. Yeah. So they um, started studying disciplines, meditative disciplines, which the Western culture doesn't really have in the same. And this was it's kind of the answer to the question. If you're still listening, I have no way of knowing. This is kind of the answer to the question, because what you realize is happening when you're taking psychedelics in the first place, even the desire to take them, and then what happens while you're on them and how you integrate the next day. That's all consciousness. That's all mind. That's all self-awareness. That's all, how do you be inside yourself and what for, right? Why are we doing any of this in the first place? So there's real practical tools of working with chaotic mind on psychedelics and any time. And one is to learn how to define it, because what you're seeing is your own mind. So how you approach it is directly affecting you. So the whole kill the ego thing, well, if you're trying to kill yourself, then generally that's frowned upon. But one way is to understand the nature of what's going on. What does it mean to have thoughts? What's doing the thinking? Is there a wider space that all of that fits into? Is a good thing to consider. All the moving thoughts are inside a larger container. You can pan out and get perspective and just watch. Buddhism says that you watch the thoughts. Eventually you get tired. They're not as arousing when you're kind of calmly with them. Like Chris said, maybe he doesn't mind the bad trip. That's kind of what it is. You're with all the thoughts and you're just letting them be there, not resisting, not trying to change, not judge. I personally have inner quiet, inner silence, and inner stillness meditations that I do. Inner silence is linked to the ears and hearing and the throat chakra. And then the inner silence stillness is related to the body as a whole, and the eyes. You can learn how to attain these states where you really have no mind. So learning how to create awareness or state of being that's beyond mind is important, but also being able to be with mind is important, right? It's easy to get enlightened at the top of a mountain, but you need tools to work with all types of reality, work in, relationships. And that tends to be with how to be with the experience. And, is it just mind? Well, they're thoughts. If you're on the ground or, if you're on a psychedelic, thoughts are very salient, but they're also feelings, right? You wouldn't mind a thought if it didn't feel like anything. Each thought, kind of correlates to a feeling or a state of feeling. That's another one. The state of your mind is a reflection of the state of your emotions. So if you examine that connection and you tap into how you're feeling and how your mind is a reflection of that, you'll get a lot of insight into your own self, ways of relating to yourself that really facilitate the kind of feelings you want: safety, calmness, happiness, that kind of thing. You have to interact with yourself in a way that engenders those feelings. So self-acceptance, non-judgment, these are um, some of the tools to keep in mind, or the frames of mind. So it's, it gets meta pretty fast. There's you, there's your feelings, there's your thoughts and feelings about those feelings, and then you're just in a cycle from there. But it's important to not try too hard to orient yourself within that. Another big theme in mindfulness is finding a point of orientation that you cultivate. Oftentimes it's the breath. And you've focused on the breath and the process of breathing so directly, like in meditation practice, so directly for so long that it kind of integrates into your mind, like your own name, let's say, right? It has a special place in your mind where if you hear 1,000 names and your name is in there, you're going to basically ignore all of those and just perk up because it means something about you physically. But it's a cognitive orientation. So breathing is non-cognitive. It's, kind of physiological. And then, like I said, I use different points of reference for the other meditation exercises because that's how they are practiced. So, okay, so there's some tools, there's some ways of thinking about what your question really means, because sometimes I find this on psychedelics. I'll go in with a question, and then I realize that my question is like the tiniest little nothing in this vast universe of experience I'm having. And it's so ridiculous to answer the question, which is going to limit the experience so vastly. But the question itself should be contemplated, because what you are trying for by asking the question, what's motivating your asking the question, is another really important thing to think about, and a way to answer the question that you're asking. So you're asking the question because you feel bad when your thoughts are spinning. Probably it's possible you're feeling bad anyway. Or maybe it's just a matter of learning how to be with another part of yourself, linked to another time, right? If we have traumas arise, they're always linked to in that moment, really salient re-experiencing of an earlier part of your childhood. Acute trauma, right? Like a car accident, or you get beat up or something. And then accumulated trauma where something was just kind of off for a long time that affects who you are. And this is kind of what you can get to if you follow some of those feelings. I found for me, after a while, going into those feelings wasn't yielding the insight that then would lead me out of the feeling. It's like you could go to therapy forever and talk about the same thing and feel the same way. At some point, you actually heal it. And then your mind doesn't do the same kind of thinking looping that it does, because, again, if the mind is a reflection of something else. So, yeah, consider why you're asking the question. I think that would yield a lot of insight as to the answer itself. I lost my train of thought. Let me try to get it back. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think that's your right in the chat. if you have follow-up questions or something didn't make sense. This is really the cornerstone. Asking the question, wanting to ask, being able to ask the question, answering the question, practicing the answer, the change in your personality or experience via these practices and inquiries. This is the spiritual path. This is the path of self-awareness and, self-cultivation and whatever version of that's your jam, enlightenment. But for me, it's been kind of exploratory. But like I said before, sometimes you want to learn how to be with something. Sometimes you do want to learn how to manipulate it. And then sometimes you want to realize that what you're experiencing is a very small component of a much larger thing. So you kind of need to cultivate all these areas to really, and then once you do, of course, you're in another territory of consciousness and life experience and conversations, because you're seeing things a different way and putting ideas together. Manipulating it, I guess we didn't talk about that, so that would be another answer to your question of how to work with spinning mind, is actually how to control it and manipulate it to your liking. I think there's a couple ways to do that. And the first one, at least, involves making your stream of consciousness thematically salient, so you can feel it in your body, where you're already feeling it, right? That's why you're asking the question in the first place. You're already feeling it. It just feels generally bad or out of control, which again, might be a trauma, might be something in the past, or it might be, let's learn how to control it. So if you can feel what you're thinking, essentially, you can feel the ideas, then you can start working with energy in your body. And that's when it turns from ideas to energy. And then conversely, they're not ideas, they're mental energy and then physical energy. Now we've created a new category to fit everything into. The thoughts are no longer the problem, right? This is like a really key kind of shift in consciousness and ability to do so. Once you see the thoughts not as thoughts, but as energy, then energy's everywhere, right? So now you're not isolating or separating out the thoughts as particular problems. You could consider that your mind is the receiver for God's consciousness. You could go into a trip and kind of prime yourself and think, I'm going to let my mind be that. Often we feel separate in society and culture, at work, even in relationships. We feel alone. And I think our mind could be this like entrapping, solitary kind of cave of aloneness and loneliness, where we're just like in our heads and his thoughts. But this is, a reflection of something else. That's not the nature of what's going on. So, right, you have energy, thoughts moving. And if you can feel them, then with breathing and physical movement, you could move energies around, right? If you feel like they're concentrated in one area of your body, you can relax that area and breathe into it. You're always breathing kind of deeply and, kind of slowly into these spaces. And then you can move your body. Here, I can show you. You can move your body, well, you can't see it really well, but like Tai Chi, right? You can make up your own Tai Chi. And as you move, you can feel the energy moving in a certain way inside you, and you learn how to correlate them. So now you can do Qigong, right? You can channel energy out your hands and feet. If you have too much energy in your physical body, that will release energy. And make you feel calmer. It's really effective. Palms and tips of the fingers, toes, and the soles of the feet. You can work with the chakras, which are areas of, I would say, intensified experience in the body. I don't like to enter the debate of is chakra real, but you know, if the genitals is a chakra, then you can understand that there's areas of the body that have more activity. The heart, of course, the throat with all its talking, and on and on. So each one, it becomes this kind of focus. So you can work with that. Really, you can start working with herbs to calm the body. So now that we're in the body, we're talking about diet, we're talking about exercise. You can work with the body in all these ways. And that's what they say, if you're going to do psychedelics, get good rest, be in a place you feel comfortable and happy, drink some water, don't eat, maybe don't do any drugs or alcohol for a couple nights before, prime your body, right? So now we're in this whole other thing. You can manipulate your thoughts by attributing characteristics to them. These are fearful thoughts, and fear doesn't help me. Or fear is myself wanting attention and feeling afraid. Or I'm going to transform this into love. So it's like an infinite number of ways you can start really using language. Sometimes thoughts are spinning because they don't have a language. Like a baby, it's just trying to cry and get attention. So attributing language to some of these things is a great tool. Ultimately, right, this is all on you. This is all like work you have to do, but it's kind of the work of life, at least for some of us, or the work that enriches life anyway. Let's see, let me switch this around. So you can manipulate feelings, direct you in the body, or you can send them into the earth, or you could raise them up into the mind. You could even, it's good to cultivate an idea of a higher source or higher order. I don't think it matters who's at the center or what the name of any particular character is, but if you have a notion that reality, the universe, consciousness is this infinite expanse, some of which is mapped, some of which you can explore. That's important too. Then you're not caught in yourself anymore, and you're not caught in like how you feel and what you're thinking. You can spread your awareness out. Like we said before about having a perspective on your thoughts. So that's manipulation. And the last one I'll say is how to make your thoughts stop. And this is what most people try to do, just make it stop. And there are good exercises to do that. Breathing exercises, mindfulness exercises, listen to the sounds around you, focus on whatever, a pebble on the floor, and just really be with it. Make your external attention strong enough that you kind of let go of your internal attention, and the thoughts you can't stop them because they're like waves, right? That they just go back into the mind, and then if they come out of the mind, they're a thought. But it's not, even the idea of the conveyor belt of thoughts, your mind is a conveyor belt. Otherwise, it would just set your heart rate and your blood pressure and whatever at one setting, and then you would die because it's always adjusting. But you can learn to, either have less energy in your mind through these practices, or to, enter the consciousness of the thinking itself, right? Once you stop the mind, then what you're left with is mind. You still have mind, it's just not moving. And that's another thing you can do once you get there, is you can experience the territory of mindlessness, or unmindedness.
that's like really quiet, but it has topography. When you go into those spaces, there's different kinds of experience of spaciousness and quiet, and stillness, and magnitude. You also become, when you're in that space, you become more sensitive to everything, your own feelings, your own thoughts. But if you're really in deep stillness and no thoughts, then you become aware of more subtle ranges, or I'd say electromagnetic frequency ranges outside our normal perception. When you get calm and really focus on whatever, you notice more detail, specifically because you're focusing your attention into a smaller territory. You get more resolution. So when you are deep in the mind, you start realizing there's like other subtle things happening. I think this is how people are psychic. I think they're only psychic because one part of them internally can get so quiet that they can hear or feel anything. And like people are radiating all sorts of energies. I mean, you read about it. Even the chromosomes are mini light radiation, and things that people are sensitive to that machines, take forever to be able to pick up, even if they ever do. So anyway, there's a whole other territory waiting for you once your thoughts get quiet. But learning how to be with a quiet mind is, at the end of the day, probably the most important thing, because most of your time's doing stuff in normal life, not being on psychedelics. So if you can make all those moments, a psychedelic spiritual practice, even though you're sober and doing shit you have to do, then you have a more interesting life. So anyway, there's about 1,000 things you can try to do homework for the next 5 years. Hey, Chris, did our listener respond or ask any follow-up questions? I had asked him.
No, I'm glad you filled it. You did just fine without me, though.
Oh, yeah, no, I went for it.
Yeah, you went for it. Yeah, I ended up. I do this job. I do these things while I'm technically at my job, but my job will oftentimes, I've got a lot of flexibility, kind of. But once in a while, I kind of have to take a phone call, and then that one was sort of something blowing up, so I was gone for a long time.
Can you smoke? If you smoke testosterone, does it come on harder?
Testosterone. You'll get muscles that much faster. What's funny is someone named Harsha just added something that just said salvia, right? That was his comment. Just salvia. Yeah. Oh, okay, salvia. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. And then he retracted it. Guess he changed his mind about salvia.
Huh. Or he changed his mind about expressing the word salvia.
Yeah. Or maybe he's on it right now. Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you about my... so last night I took a take. I'm not going to keep it because it wasn't good enough. And I've taken 2 of these now. Oops. Of Salvia Church. Shooting it. So I call it a 3-bowl mass. This ritual that I'm creating around salvia and then shooting video, similar to the setup that I've got now, with a black and white fractal in the background and some green screen stuff. But the ritual itself is a 3-bowl mass, and all you really do is choose your theme or your intention for that first bowl and go in to the salvia space, and then I'll play music, play sound and meditate into that sound. Then when the time comes, we do it one more time, but I don't set the intention for the second or third bowl until I'm to that point, because I figure that the first bowl is going to inform what I want to do with the second.
Yeah, that's cool.
And sometimes it's very tangible. Yesterday, it was very just emotional. I'm trying to think of what the first one was. I can't remember. The second one, though, I was kind of fucking up the music a lot, and I was a little unhappy with it. But it wasn't so bad that I had to stop. So instead, plus I'm in the middle of the salvia ritual that I want to take seriously. That's the weird thing about doing psychedelic like entertainment videos, is there's a weird balance between respecting the medicine and the process, but at the same time you're making an artifact that in theory an audience might see at some point. So in any case, my second one was just forgiveness. That was just the energy that I set for the second bowl, because I was dealing with having kind of fucked up some stuff and feeling bad about it. Oh, I remember the first one was just permission to go deep, I believe, was the first one. And then the third one was maybe, I often use just like really, it's just energies basically. The third one was, since the first one was depth, the second one was forgiveness, the third one was lightness. Because I wanted to kind of come out and play in some more major kinds of feels. And kind of in the ritual on a lighter note. So I just used lightness. And I'll go through these, the whole mass takes 20 to 30 minutes. Oops. Still there, Jeremy?
Yep. Oh, I was just listening. Was that it?
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. I mean, I might add more elements later, but you got to remember that there's a lot of video elements that does take a lot of work, and then there's music elements, and that takes a lot of work. So the ritual itself, yeah, it can add up, I guess, but doesn't take much. I mean, the salvia does the work.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been talking about Salvia Church for a while. Is there anyone else on it doing salvia with you?
Well, we have talked about this. You and I have talked about this for a long time. Is inviting people from the public. And I like to do it one thing at a time, kind of like do it alone, get to where I'm good at it, and I know what it is I'm doing, and then maybe invite you if you wanted to come, and then eventually maybe even strangers.
Oh, yeah. Tell me when the next one's happening. I'll absolutely join you. I've been wanting to do salvia in a controlled setting. So this would be a good opportunity. I'm realize I have a lot of salvia territory to explore. I've never explored.
Yeah, you've asked me about salvia actually. Even when we're not on camera, you've been asking me, because the irony, so people know, is that Jeremy introduced me to salvia 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But and he has smoked it quite a few times, but not as many times as me, because I just ended up building a intimate relationship with it.
Yeah, you made salvia your job.
It doesn't pay very well, but it's sort of my spiritual job. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, going really deep on salvia that's kind of I feel like there's this threshold I need to break. I explored one territory pretty well. But
on salvia?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I've actually been considering. I've been considering how to create a space that contributes to the experience.
Physical space? How do you mean space?
Yeah, physical space. I mean, it's kind of creative. It's only for creative consideration, but salvia can be so disorienting that maybe music. Anyway, I've thought of a bunch of things that I wanted to set the space so that it includes elements that part of my mind immediately recognizes, and that way I can curtail that thing that can happen when your mind's trying to orient but can't, and then I could just stay in the trance space because I have a point of reference. Breath, I guess, is good internally. So I've been kind of pondering how to do a large session and what might else, what else might contribute to it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, one interesting element that I'm experimenting with now, obviously, with the salvia, the 3-bowl mass, is back-to-back bowls with about 10 minutes in between, roughly. But that is
Like right at,
the timing itself is just kind of how my high is working and how the music is working.
yeah. How far past the peak would you say 10 minutes is for you? Like, are you back after 10 minutes?
Well, I remain in a bit of a light trance, but I suppose the drug itself has completely dissipated.
And how deep do you go? That's so subjective, but
No, that's a fine question. But how deep I go when I'm making videos is so much different than when I'm doing it by myself. Because I would say my doses are medium by my standards. But because I'm playing music and performing, I'm still kind of externalized, and I never go quite as deep.
gotcha. Oh, you're used.
But I also,
playing.
but I also, yes, because I'm playing, and I don't even really stop. I mean, I stop. That's the cat right there. um. I don't know. It's weird when I am talking and playing music and shooting video, and I'm on salvia. It actually kind of does have a depth, but it's a different kind of depth. Like the trance itself is not as deep, the trance like state, but I'm still kind of like it almost has a different kind of depth. It's like the energy, the psychedelic energy is becoming more externalized than purely internalized, I guess. It's hard to describe.
That makes sense. So you can still function, but you're high.
Yeah,
so are you?
definitely.
I guess I didn't. Well, when you said 3, I immediately thought if that was Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, but obviously it's just 3 intentions.
Well, I mean, I did call it a mass. I only called it a mass because I like the word. And since I'm Catholic, I've been to lots of masses, but there's not anything particularly massy about it. But I was like, ritual? No, that's lame. Service? No, come on, that's lame. And then I was like, mass? That's less lame.
Yeah, only you make Catholicism kind of badass. Like you're ripping off their words and improving on them
and adding spirituality.
and adding drugs. And spirituality.
I'm taking Catholicism, only adding spirituality.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, awesome. Salvia Church. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, the dream would be to be able to do like group sessions with people, because everybody does integration circles. Everybody, as in the people who do integration circles, and like on Zoom, right? But I've never heard of anybody actually doing like taking drugs together on like a Zoom. And you would not. I'm not sure doing it with like mushrooms would be much fun. I mean, maybe you could figure it out, but something like salvia, like, because it only takes a few minutes and you're meditating anyway, and it's fun to meditate in groups. So that's the theory behind it. But the one thing at a time, just doing it myself and creating kind of a ritual out of it is the first step before including other people, basically, is the thought.
Yeah, cool. How do we get on that topic?
I think it's because I wanted to talk about the video shoot that I was doing yesterday. You've been in some interesting places today.
Oh yeah, and this is the community garden, which is really close to my house in Boulder. So yeah, I'm just walking around the neighborhood. I have this rental, and I've had it for 18 years, and it's been a co-op. and pretty well known in town. It's just really special to a lot of people. Big community, and my wife and I are trying to buy a retreat center in Southern Oregon, and I'm in Colorado, so we're selling this house, and it's been kind of emotional because I'm really attached to it, and there's a lot of history, and I love the area, and I lived here for 15 years, or 10 years in that house. So anyway, I've been painting it and getting it ready for sale, and not quite sure what's going to happen, and getting to walk the neighborhood and kind of relive my old life. So it's been kind of nice.
Yeah.
So you did the stream. Yeah, you were telling us.
Well, this was not a stream. It was just me shooting video.
Oh. But it didn't work out as well as your trial.
It was okay. Yeah, my original was better, and that one I didn't want to keep because I literally said this is a rehearsal and I'm not keeping it, or something like that in the video. On the other hand, you never know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe that makes it cooler, and I should put it up.
Cut it out, I guess. And you're talking about your intentions and what you're seeing and stuff?
Yeah, it's funny because most of my most popular videos, my talking videos are always a lot more popular than my musical videos. And I try to integrate talking and I mean, like I'm doing right now, I'm playing and talking, but it is difficult, and especially if you're also smoking salvia or using other psychedelics and going into this deep space, mind space. It's funny because you have to release into that mind space in order to make it real. You have to actually have a psychedelic experience, or else what's the point? But it does mean that at the same time, you've got an awful lot to deal with, because you are having a trip on one hand. You're also trying to express yourself and make something meaningful for your audience. And of course, in my case, because I'm such a nerd and you have all these fucking karate or all this stupid computer stuff, I actually have like a lot of gear to think about too. And all of the musical content.
Do you ever do karate on your videos? Can you like slice a watermelon in half with your hand?
Slice a watermelon in half? Yeah, actually I
easy.
probably could slice a watermelon in half, maybe. Yeah, I study karate is what he is bringing up, and he knows. I am a orange belt right now. I've been studying for about a year. My 9-year-old daughter is an orange belt. Or sorry, I'm an orange belt. She's a purple belt.
She's just waiting for that moment where she gets to use that shit.
Yeah, it's funny is that we do these. Karate's so cool because it's got this like, it's mostly exercise, but also has this kind of like monastic kind of quality, sort of. It has a religious quality and a ritualistic quality sometimes, and we'll have these like codes that we say together and stuff like that. That I was at church. I hate doing that. These long creeds that you all say together, and everybody's saying it, even though they only believe half of it. Anyway, one of these like creed things that we say at karate says, "I hope that I never have to use my karate." And I always think, my family always jokes about it. We're like, that's a lie. That you're hoping that someday you have to use your karate.
Yeah, you don't get to punch anything in church either, so it's way less cool.
That is definitely the main problem with church.
So yeah, you missed my talk. Our listener asked about working with his mind, so we were talking about different ways of doing that. Back to bicycle day, for one of the things for me, originally they tried to use LSD for psychotherapy, addiction and such in the 50s and 60s. But because for me, spirituality is the main reference point, bicycle day is when a chemist in a lab created a uniquely Western chemical, of which there's many analogs in nature. His is unique, but it's based on a serotonin molecule.
You remember in his book, sorry if I'm distracting from your story, but I was just thinking about the analogs when in his book he talks about how, he was devoting his life to LSD, and he was a pretty straight-laced guy, but becoming less straight-laced because he was using a lot of psychedelics. And and then at some point, he realized that Morning Glory had LSA in it, and that LSA is almost the same as LSD. And he's like looking in his backyard, and he's like, holy shit.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, like this crazy esoteric stuff that he discovered and invented and devoted his life to, he realized it had just been in his backyard the whole time.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then, even though by then he was well respected and everything, he went to a conference and presented on LSA and said how morning glory seeds, which is a common plant, has LSA in it, and it has enough of it that you can actually harvest it and use it. And they didn't believe him. Everybody trashed him at first and said, "This can't be true." Go back, go look at your data again. This cannot be true.
Yeah, exactly.
People didn't believe it.
He's like, "Oh, oops, I misread it. I thought it said it was in there, but clearly it's not." I think he was better than that.
Well, scientists do make mistakes, but they're also, the scientific community is an actual community or group of communities, and things like politics are real, or psychology and power dynamics and jealousy and economics. All of those things exist within the scientific community, and so these things can happen. And science isn't nearly as nice and clean as a lot of people assume it is.
So yeah, right. So he, nature, it's in there. People say that each psychedelic offers a particular portal to a different dimension, or offers you a different dimension, or affects the brain. A lot of people say that, and usually on higher doses. If you start doing variants of something like 2CB or 2CD, or you, there's different kinds of DMT. But
you're cutting out. Oh, that sounds weird.
Oh. Do I sound okay now?
Oh yeah, now you do sound better. Your video froze it again. Oh, it's been a little slow. I don't know if the internet's very good there. You're in Boulder though. You'd think that every inch of Boulder would have great internet.
It doesn't, and they don't have a lot of staff at the city office. Anyway, but I guess kind of what I'm getting to is, while we think of, some of us think of psychedelics as these traditional things, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But similar to other molecules, which you could think about or not, but interesting, spiritual, or psychospiritual.
Yeah, you're not coming in very well now.
Yeah. Oh, how about that?
Now your audio is at least. Oh, and the video got a little better.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I only have 2 bars.
Oh, that's the problem. We're learning as we try to live stream over Zoom. We're learning so much about the dead spaces in the Denver area. I had the problem when I was living there that my house was kind of in a dead space, and that sucked.
Oh. Yeah, I haven't walked around this area in a long time.
Sorry, what area did you say? We were talking about Folsom, so I was assuming you were in Boulder.
Yeah, I just walked across the street. The gardens are basically across the street.
Oh, at Folsom.
I mean, quarter mile, but like, yeah. Actually, I might go to. Remember the Rayback Collective?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's after your time. I might go get a beer while we're talking.
A beer?
So, yeah, I don't know the significance of that, but I do think it's interesting that while they were looking for, pharmaceuticals, basically, they discovered something that had this other application and woke people up to this dimension and, got people interested in this maybe, even ushered in, there's a lot of components, but maybe even ushered in the 60s, right? As free thinking and free living and experimentation after the
absolutely.
50s. So this is, I'm not always so keen bringing things, but I heard an author kind of surmise that the prevalence of psychedelics is the Earth's way of kind of getting us fucking before we annihilate ourselves. It's non-falsifiable.
All right. When we all kill ourselves, we'll realize that theory was wrong.
But yeah, the fact that these psychedelics are becoming more common use, then later on, I can't remember when he did his work, but Sasha Shulgin, made hundreds of psychedelic chemicals. And I do think that, what these chemicals are doing, there's so many different opinions on psychedelics and what they do and why we should use them or not, or what for. But the effect they're having seems to be one that is important. It seems to affect people in a way that makes them better. It's medicine, like I say, in a kind of sacred context, but it's not just medicine for your body. Obviously, it's medicine for your mind. And wasting and resource abuse that we have going on isn't just the system. It's the way people think and feel, and the kind of decisions they make behind closed doors, and ethics and morality. And I say spirit, but it has to be something bigger than you and bigger than humanity. That's spirit. Anything that's fucking bigger. The earth is bigger than you, and it's clearly living. And how you interpret that, what that means in terms of consciousness, is debatable, but it's definitely stronger than we are. So yeah, I think that's probably why they were made illegal, right? Actually, there were I'm forgetting the context, the languaging, it was either a newspaper article or paper, I can't remember, but that the notion of LSD as a molecule of abuse and the negative effect that it was having could be seen because people were growing lethargic and uninterested or unwilling to engage basically the social norm. But, you know, to any normal person, it looks like getting a job and working in your society in this kind of prescripted way. And people didn't want to do that because they were being awakened to other more, they're being awakened to pressures, survival pressures or awarenesses or patterns they've seen that made their sense of life be more inherently meaningful. I do think that it's easy to control people if they have no reason to live and nothing really to live for. And I think that plagues a lot of people. If you really drill somebody about why they're alive, what they're here for, you know, if you don't get a good response, all that empty space gets filled with the fucking dominant paradigm. Whatever images and slogans are being bombarded to us, like, you really have to be pretty proactive to define your own reality in such a way that you stay, you know, immune to as many of those social pressures as possible, because they're not there for anyone's ultimate well-being. They're not. You can use them if you want, but no one's out there being like, this is gonna like make the world a better place. Like some people, but you know, you talk about most of normal life. Now I'm pretty sure we could have come up with another fuel source by now if everyone fucking worked together to figure it out. But like, yeah. So
well, we have a lot of problems.
Changes thinking.
We have a lot of problems, like with the fuel thing, where, and this is sort of the center of morality, maybe itself. But some people say that anyway. But that there are a lot of examples where what is good for everybody isn't good for the individual. And so we end up with this tension where, I mean, like, fuel is a perfect example. That's why I thought of it. Is most people, other than complete dipshits, realize that climate change is a problem and we need to do something about it. But if you think about it from the point of view of any individual person or any individual country, the best case scenario is that everybody else is responsible and starts making some difficult changes in their lives or in their economy, except for you, right? Like, you want to be the last country. You want everybody else to set up solar, but your country can still take advantage of fossil fuels, because that's what's best for your economy. So when and this happens in our lives a lot too, even like when you're driving or whatever, where what is best ultimately for the community and what is best for the individuals in the community isn't the same thing, and then we get in problems. Because those things become very, very challenging to, even when everybody's like, yeah, we need to solve this, so everybody else do it. They are very hard to solve.
Yeah, psychedelics make you feel like you're part of everything and everything's part of the same thing and you are, and you know, it's also, psychedelics are like a taskmaster, right? If you go in and you're like, motherfucker, I'm the best and I'm solo and I'm going to do it for myself, it's going to kick your ass and make you feel fucking horrible, like you're in hell. And so you just learn that you better fucking get yourself into the right headspace, because if you don't, it's just going to be a bad time. And once you do that enough, you just stick with that headspace because it's better for everything. Generosity and, you know, kindness and whatever. That's the world works better that way. Everybody knows that. But psychedelics drive it home because they won't let you do it. So yeah,
psychedelics tend to drive everything home, huh?
They drive everything home. Yeah. and it's not totally flexible. Alcohol is pretty flexible. Weed is pretty flexible. Psychedelics may or may not be. You know, if it has an agenda for you, that's what you're gonna be fucking doing for the next 10 hours. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. But it's the ego, I guess. If you surrender, there's less ego. Therefore, you feel like you're more in participation, even though, you know, who knows whether you are or not. So yeah, I think these chemicals are inducing the kind of mindsets that the world needs. And I think that's the tension between the, you know, governing forces that want to limit us awakening to a better way, because they can't control that. You know, they can't police that. They can't make money off that. And, you know, it's not all negative. Having some control is probably good. They're powerful elements, but, you know, it's never the socially condoned people that really are the best to handle them, the cops and the therapists and the people with licenses. This is really, because it's been an underground thing for so long, a lot of the masters are underground. They don't have social credentials, and that's kind of how it is. You know, you get a lot of people that are jumping on board, but, you know, if you've done mushrooms times in 1 year, that doesn't make you a master. So I don't know if at the end of the day it's really creating this revolution. I do think a lot of the effects of psychedelics, you know, happen within the individual, spiral out to their communities. I mean, the whole world is communities, so eventually, but, you know, at the top, for whatever reason, the marijuana has become legal. Like, okay, you know, there's hope, at least in the States. But I don't really know ultimately how much impact or how quickly the impact is happening. You know, there's endless stories of government officials and scientists and businessmen, and, you know, if not using them, which also happens, either using psychedelics for specific problems or taking them and having some life-changing realization that they realize they can't devote their life to something that's out of alignment with what they now know is the truth of reality through their perspective. So, you know, that's how it engenders meaning.
There is, I just read about this psychedelic church in Utah, and it's still going. It's called the Divine Assembly. And it was started by, I forget the fellow's name, but, I didn't even try to memorize it, actually. But he was a Mormon Republican state senator. And then I forget why he did ayahuasca, but he did ayahuasca. And all of a sudden, for lack of a better word, he basically became a hippie and got cool. And then he ended up going so far that he started a psychedelic church that is still going today.
Wow. See, that's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, our lives become more enriched with cool shit.
I better take another one. You're solo now.
Oh, there isn't this goal-oriented, you know, we got to have the most bombs or make the most money or get the most oil because we need it or we're fucked. All of a sudden, life becomes rich with actual meaning, actual purpose. Going to work is not the fucking purpose. You know, learning, having relationships, doing community, experiencing nature, you know, being happy. Like, this is the purpose of being in life. And work and real world necessities are part of that. But there's a bigger meaning. And I think that's what we forget That's why we're easily controlled, brainwashed, and that's what you relearn on psychedelics or spirituality or meditation or whatever. But if you start to cultivate your own self-awareness, you realize, first of all, that you're out of fucking alignment. It's usually what happens. Like the Republican senator, he's like, oh God, what have I done? Where am I? This is nuts. This is totally out of alignment with my belief system or sense of what's true or what I know needs to be true, right? Sometimes it's not a matter of becoming wise, but just about or learning or having some cognitive. It's about just enjoying your experience of your time on Earth. There's really no race. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to get to. That's why people drop out when they take psychedelics. They're like, there is no end to this race. And it sucks for everybody and the planet. So let's not do it. And then whatever, life does look like more like a hippie life. If that means, being in touch with what's real. And most of us don't know what that is because we haven't had a chance to be exposed to enough to decide what's true. So yeah, I find it interesting that at that moment in his lab, he created this molecule to get into the Western mainstream. Mushrooms came at the same time, and there's other drugs as well. But psychedelics were a unique class, and certainly not widespread like alcohol, tobacco, probably cocaine, heroin. Right, basically non-psychedelic drugs, stimulants and opiates. I don't know who's listening, but Chris can look when he gets back. There is an echo though out of one of his machines with a time lapse from Zoom. I'm hearing myself talk back to me. I think the answer or the points to
All
it
right,
all.
sorry about that, everybody.
It being sure. I was going to tell everyone the point at all.
You're going to tell them what? Oh, I think I just lost him. Jeremy just disappeared. Right when I started to change to this sound too, which is the best one. Oh, are you there? You there, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you just reappeared.
So it boils down to, like, look yourself. I actually the question of how to, deal with fitting. But if you why the question, I got a lot of good answers right off the bat. So it's easy. Yeah, well, service around here is horrible.
Yeah, I guess so.
Sorry about that. Do we have any comments or questions?
Somebody misspelled, said blessings. I believe misspelling blessings. And we've got, let's see, our buddy Hayes Anderson, who I can't tell who's on the whole time. I can only see the comments, but we've had Hayes every show, I think. He's our fan.
What's up, Hayes? Yeah, I hope somebody gets something out of what we're talking about. I think, all right, so yeah, no questions. Well, I do like bringing it back, I've had a lot of these experiences, but one in particular, there's a trail by my house, and there's a little creek, and the trail's like you're really in the woods. And in the summer, the creek would be low enough that I would take a chair and pitch it in the creek and just sit in the creek. It ran under the chair and just read or, drink a beer or whatever. And people would walk by me, and like at least every third person, if not more, would have this experience, right? They would see me, think like, that looks awesome, or wow, I would have never thought to do that, and then have this kind of like you got it going on, or like, wow, you must be having a great time. But it's almost shocking to people. Even when we stop to rest or have fun or just enjoy life, there's also prescripted ways. But like, yeah, I don't think if you're going for a walk, you should be going for steps all the time, or trying to, limit yourself on the clock, or just fucking walk. Just enjoy walking and enjoy looking around you. Like, not having to have a goal or being at work or, fucking social media's work. It's that mindset of like, I gotta. Like, I think that's the fucking point of drugs, and I think that's what it leads us to, is just fucking stop for a second and just like be, right? Don't be on the clock. Like, go check out the weather, like notice what's happening in the day. Just like be. That's what's fucking wrong with this country. I mean, with this world, with Western industrial complex, or all the Eastern industrial complex. It's all humans, man. Technology is just raging so that we can have a bunch of shit that we only want because we're usually so stressed out by the lifestyle we have to lead that we think we need those, or we've been brainwashed into thinking that some special shampoo is the fucking answer to God knows what. It's completely absurd. We need such a small fraction of what we have, and if we could limit ourselves, we would have to work a small fraction of what we actually are working. And just have a life that's living, try something new. I don't know, if you, I don't know. The meditation metaphor is, if you can't sit on the cushion, that's why you have to, right? Just fucking sit there. And, if you always need something occupying you, then like, that's a problem. That's the problem of consciousness. Psychedelics are so intense that they force you. You're filled with such intense thoughts and feelings that you yourself people would often attribute it to visions or the external world, which is true, but you yourself are now have such a magnitude of experience and such a magnitude of realness in the moment. It's 11 a.m. on Tuesday, and you're filled with visions, right? And feelings, and like your inner world is so intense that you realize that just being is the fucking point. Because that's all you can do on psychedelics is just be with the experience. But life is always like that. Every moment you're full of your experience, and to just be with yourself is like really a big part of the point of all of this. Because, we're here to have an experience, not to fucking accomplish whatever nonsense bullshit that we think we're supposed to accomplish of buying or having social status or a certain job. Just like create a life that's meaningful and a lifestyle that's meaningful. Living in the city sucks. It's only set up to file everybody to work. That's how they're designed. So you're just in the machine, and everyone's got all these cars, and it's noisy, and fumes everywhere. This is not healthy. I read one chapter today in a book that discussed the annihilation of an Amazonian tribe for oil prospecting for enough oil to last the United States 2.5 weeks. Which is a lot of fucking oil.
Yeah, that's actually a lot of oil.
That's not worth trading 2 weeks of use against, a whole culture. It's fucking ridiculous. So everybody should be high in psychedelics like every 2 months until they pull their head out of their ass. Okay, there's my rant.
Yeah.
Especially government
I'll hold
officials.
space for you
They're
there. I'm not sure I'm completely on board with the cities are evil stance, but I'll let you roll with it.
Well, they're not evil, but they're overstimulating, and it's hard to stay in touch with other things that are meaningful because it's distracting. It's hard to just be with yourself, So what else, Chris? What time is it?
We our stream now is at. I was looking at the time. I think we're at about an hour and a half, so we can call it whenever we want.
Well, do you have any?
Well, I will say that I love that sound, but I did manage to gravitate back to C. My adventures in keys other than C or F or G tend to be limited. It's not always on purpose. I look down my fingers and go, why am I hitting the C so much? How did that happen?
I was looking for players recently, and a B3 player reached out, which I thought was cool because there are not a lot of them. And this is only funny because I do this professionally, because obviously it takes time to learn your instrument. That's totally how it is for all of us. But he told me he could play in C, F, and G. And I wasn't quite sure what to say when he told me that, because I suppose if I'm looking for a band member, I kind of want them to be only playing all keys. Anyway,
have you ever read this? It's like a famous Craigslist ad by a bass player. Have you heard? Do you remember this?
No, but
okay.
I love Best of Craigslist.
Yeah, okay. It was Best of Craigslist. It was a bass player who said, "Okay, I'm looking for paying gigs, and I cost whatever, and I can play C and G." And if you want any fancy stuff that's not either a C or a G, you're going to have to pay extra. He only could play two notes, and you had to pay extra if you wanted more than just a C or a G. Any fancy stuff. He could do this.
Really nailing the business side of things, but I'm not sure he is.
Oh, that's probably too fast for him, though. He's a bass player's like. That's not a very good bassy sound.
Although there's some bass synth sounds in that instrument that are great in treble range. So you should check them out.
That is true, actually. A lot of the sounds that are for basses are really great for melody too. So I'll do that for $50 a night. But if you want this, that's gonna be $75. Or, well, that's just C and G, but it's awfully fast. I might need $90 and a beer per gig. Oh, I just got a raise. Oh, never mind. Yeah, I think that I think it's an hour and a half. I think I'm good to call it a session, and we will presumably do it again next week. This was on Wednesday because of scheduling, but we will probably. I mean, I guess we'll talk about. It's still an experiment. This was number 5, but our default has always been Fridays, and we were talking about doing it earlier too. Do you still want to do that, Jeremy?
Yeah. Might as well.
So that would be not this upcoming Friday, but the next Friday, assuming that its schedule is okay. And instead of starting out, let's see, 2 in Mountain, it would be 1 in Mountain. Or for me, instead of 1 Pacific, it is 12 Pacific.
Right.
You'd see all those skills?
That was amazing.
Yeah, I know. I'm an organized man.
School?
I should be a administrator.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, thanks to everybody who joined in. We appreciate the audience.
Yeah, and
questions and collaboration.
And have a happy bicycle day on Friday and it's Stony 420 on Saturday.
Yeah, enjoy as the